Hey pilots, this is Craig Gamble with Paraglider Service USA, and I want to go over something that I've mentioned periodically, but it's important to refresh on this, and that is that are you getting your money's worth when you're getting your glider trim tuned? That's a big question because for years when I was trim tuning, I had no idea I was doing it wrong until I was factory trained. Then the light went on. And like most hobbyist trim tuners, and believe it or not, I've seen quite a few professional shops out there, their reports showing that they're not doing it all correctly. And what we're doing is we're evaluating the lines to plus or minus 10 millimeters from factory spec and adjusting accordingly. However, by default, that automatically allows a variance of plus or minus 20 millimeters between the rows. So if you're plus 10 millimeters averaged on the A row and minus 10 on the B row, and plus 10 on the C row and minus 10 on the D row, guess what? You're passing when you're doing the plus or minus 10 millimeter scenario. But between those rows, we got a 20 millimeter difference between plus 10 and minus 10. And that's a huge problem. And what Nova teaches is that the difference between the rows is going to be no more than plus or minus 4 millimeters. So that's a whole new ball game here. And so in order to evaluate that, and what you need to look at on all your, if you had your glider trim in the past, take a look at the report. You know, if you look here, every glider's line layouts, models between the different models of the same brand, or and so on and so forth, the line layouts are going to vary substantially. Now on this glider here, we got 3 main A lines and 3 main B lines and 3 main C lines and D lines. And of course the CDs are usually combined today for the most part. But on the A1 line, the main A line, we got 3 lines on that group. On A2, we got 3 lines. A3 the same, and same with B1, B2, and B3, C1, C2, C3. But see, we got 3 lines here, 3 lines there, and 6 lines here on A3, B3, and C3. And so these line groupings are going to vary, like I was saying earlier, between all the gliders, and your spreadsheet has to group them for each and every glider in order to evaluate the line groups appropriately. So when we evaluate the gliders, we're evaluating the results of A1, A2, A3 in comparison to B1, B2, B3, and C1, T2, 3, and D1, D2, 3. And so I'm taking the results of this, what I call line group A1, in comparison to B1, in comparison to C1, in comparison to D1. And the difference between these results should be no more than plus or minus 4 millimeters. If it's Nova, and it's, I think, plus or minus 6 millimeter with Fee gliders. And I'm not sure about the other factories, but I think Nova and Fee have a leg up on in comparison to the other gliders or manufacturers because they have this guy named Ralph Antz who's a mathematical engineer, and he guy dialed in them as far as trim coming goes to the minute degree. I mean, when I make an adjustment here or over here on any of the main lines, I don't even have to retrim the glider. He knows all the line diameters are incorporated into the spreadsheet for each and every line on each and every make and model of glider and size of glider, so that when I make an adjustment, he knows how much it's going to reduce that line length for the total line length of each of these segments. And so it's pretty precise. Well, it's to the gnat's ass, man. It's just unbelievable. But anyhow, what your report should have on it is something like this: line group charts. So this glider that you see pictured here, which is a Fee Beat, and its line layouts on the trim thing, I have of each line group labeled, and see I got it colored. The yellows are all line group 1s for the A, B, and C and D rows. The blues are all the line group 2s, and the greens are all the line group 3s for each of the rows, and the orange here are the stabilos. And so once I've grouped them, and then I average out the results down here at the bottom of the table for each row, and then I put them in a chart. You can see this before data chart that I'm circling my plus sign on. And then I put it in a report for easy to reading for the client. And so each of the line groups, where the plus sign here is, so you have the results here. And what populates in red are the areas that are out of pitch. They're more than plus or minus 4 milliliters from the adjoining row. And so the way you evaluate this is vertically. You never evaluate the glider horizontally in relationship to the line group. So I'm going to evaluate line group A1 on the right side to B1, and then C1 to B1, and D1 to B1, and then A1 to C1, and A1 to D1. And that's how you evaluate each and every line group. It's going to be A2 to B2, C2 to B2, D2 to B2, A2 to C2, and A2 to D2. And so you do that each and every row. My Excel spreadsheet does that automatically and just populates in red where the problems are, and then I know at a glance how to start my process. And then over here, after I've made my mailing adjustments, so here's the mailing loops, what they were before, and then the green over here shows what I did afterwards. So this, if you look at these numbers here, these results, they're all less the 10 millimeters or less. So there's nothing greater than minus 10 millimeters, nothing more than plus 10 millimeters. So this glider would be passing. If I did it, measured this glider 10 years ago, I'd have been, oh, it's hunky-dory. But it's not. It's not. Look at, I got 9 line groups that I had to, melting loops over here that I had to change in order to get the pitch balanced. And so once I made those differences, so I changed these melting loops and it corrected everything. So I have no more red showing on the after table over here. And if you look at these numbers, I mean, look at it. We got -3, -1.2, +2, +2.7. You know, there's nothing more than plus or minus 3 millimeters in order to get the pitch balanced. But that's what you got to do in order to trim tune a glider appropriately. And that's what unfortunately, a lot of hobbyist trim tuners and shops out there are not doing this aspect. It takes time to set up a Excel spreadsheet in relationship to all its line groups, because every glider is different. It takes me a good hour to readjust my Excel spreadsheet here for the line groups for each and every row. And there's gliders where the A row and the B row, in this case, they're all the same. The A row, the B row, and the C row are identical as far as their line layouts go, and the amount of numbers aligned per group. But I get gliders all the time where I got 3 here, and I got 5 here in the yellow, and I got 6 over here in the yellow, and the D I get 1 or 2. And then each line group, it's different. And sometimes I'll have a C row where actually the third line group is actually off the B main line, and vice versa. And the mixture and the variety out there is incredible. But you got to take the time to group them, to average out the results. I got to change the spread. So if I go down here in this average here, where I'm clicking down here, I have to see my plus sign. And it has up here in the table, it's averaging F24 to F26 up here in the syntax. And so 24, bing, 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 for those 3 lines. And then the next one, it's got a different range. And I got to do that all the way across the board here in order to get this table, this chart data table, which shows a little more clearly here, to get these results to populate out correctly so I can evaluate the line groups appropriately between each other. And so it takes time, and time, a lot of people don't want to spend that time. They do it quick, down and dirty. So I just want to make you aware. Check your reports to see if you have line group charts like this. And then it's a good sign that the shop is doing you right. They're evaluating the line groups appropriately between the rows. Now, because they're putting in a line group chart doesn't necessarily mean they're evaluating it, but it's a good chance they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't be taking the time to put them in these line groups, because that's the whole idea behind it, to see the results in the line group fashion. And that way you can compare line, the A3 with the B3, the C3 and the D3, and then the A2 with the B2, the C2, and the A1, the B2 and the C2 and the D2, and so on and so forth. But you know what I mean. I'm just kind of messing up my numbers here because I'm trying to get through this quickly, so I don't have overtax you here. But I just kind of want to make you aware of that. There's many gliders out there that pass plus or minus 10 millimeters, but their pitch can be way off. And one thing to keep in mind is anytime you have the A3, A1, let's say, an A line group, and a C line group or a D line group that's more than plus 10 millimeters, that's greater than plus 10 millimeters difference between the two, your glider is going to be unsafe to fly. And that's per the manufacturers, the test pilots, and civil. And so it can go to minus 20 and still be passing, but it can't be greater than plus 10 millimeters. And inherently, gliders, then angle attack increases as time progresses, the way the lines deteriorate, shrink. And so, you know, just doing the plus or minus 10 millimeters, you can have up to plus or minus 20 millimeters in pitch, even though the lines are not greater than plus or minus 10 millimeters. And then with that pitch difference of plus 20, well, anything over greater than 10 is not passing, is unsafe to fly, and you know they're passing them when they're evaluating just the line lengths to plus or minus 10 millimeters instead of evaluating the pitch in addition to that. So I just want to make you guys all aware of that, because it's something, you know, I feel really bad that, you know, I was thinking I was doing a great service for years, trim tuning gliders for clients, and not realizing that I didn't know what the heck I was doing until the factory got a hold of me and got me up to speed in that regard. So I just want to make the public aware what to be aware of in that regard, so that, you know, that you're getting your money. So if you're paying $150 versus $200, and the guy that you're paying $150 to do the trim tuning is not doing that, well, guess what? You've kind of wasted your money there. Spend $200 to get a trim tuning done, to get it done right. But be wary that there's guys out there that charge $200 to do trim tuning, and they're not doing the line group scenario either. So just want to make you aware of this. Anyhow, take care, guys, and fly safe out there. And make sure you get your glider service in regards to the periodic table there that's on your user manuals. It's only to your own benefit, because, you know, gravity sucks.